Hi, my name is Stefan Kovac, Clinical Educator Emeritus here at Healthmark Industry, and I want to welcome you to our 7 days of continuing education video series celebrating you, the medical device reprocessing professional, and all the hard work you do every day. You could work in a CPD, SPD, MD, RD, CSSD, and endo, a small clinic, ambulatory care, anywhere where you're reprocessing medical devices. This information is for you. Some say knowledge is power. We believe the real power is when we are all sharing our knowledge with others. That's what we're going to do over these next 7 days is share our knowledge with you because you truly are the heartbeat of the hospital, reprocessing those medical devices every day, whether they're scopes or instruments or trays or cut down trays, it doesn't matter. You're doing a great job every day. So each day of CS Week 2023, Healthmark will release new educational videos worth 1 CEU. Yep, that's right. 7 CEUs in 7 days, just as a thank you from all of us at Healthmark. Everybody at Healthmark wants to say thank you for doing a great job every day. We want you to keep this in your thoughts as you watch these videos. Remember that you are doing amazing things right now. Build on those successes to make change where change needs to be made. So, how do you get that certificate? It's easy as 1, 2, 3. 1, watch the video. 2, click on the video link description. 3, take the quiz and pass it. It's that simple. But we need you to do one more thing. Please fill out the feedback form so we can continue to improve. Tell us what you want to know, and we will work on providing that information. So now, relax, sit back, and enjoy as we share our experience and knowledge with you. And again, we thank you for taking time out of your day to view the programs we have put together. Have a great CS Week 2023, and remember to always keep it clean. Take care. Bye now.
Hello, my name is Cheron Rojo, and I'm Senior Clinical Education Specialist at Healthmark Industries. I'm going to talk to you about enhanced inspection, the benefit, selection, and compliance. For the objectives, we're going to discuss how to select the various enhanced inspection tools in the marketplace today and their use. We're going to review the ANSI/AAMI standards and recommendations for ST79 and ST91 and the various IFUs on the use of enhanced magnification. We're also going to review key areas of concern for various complex instrumentation in your department. So in Objective 1, how to basically select the various enhanced inspection tools out in the marketplace, there is a lot of surface optical inspection tools out in the market, and we're going to help break it down to see which one would be a great fit for your department. Now, it may not just be one, it actually might be several. This is due to the different types of inventory that you have. Obviously, and IFUs have a big part of it, and standards and recommendations. The first picture on the top left is called a handheld magnifier. These are relatively cheap and inexpensive, but don't let the price fool you. Just because an item is inexpensive doesn't mean it doesn't have a stronger magnification. For an example, this one here has 3 times, 10 times, and even 55 times the magnification. And it can also do rigid endoscopes, or something that is a little bit smaller in diameter to be able to view that distal tip. Next to that are your desktop magnifiers that we're typically used to at our workstations, and they range between, surprisingly, a 1.8 to 2 times the magnification. So these can be pretty pricey, but just because you're paying higher in price doesn't mean, again, that it has higher magnification. As you can see that the picture that we just talked about with the handheld magnifier, it's actually a lot lower. So do they have their place? They do. These types of desktop workstation magnifiers are to cover large surfaces of devices or a larger quantity. The picture next to it is what we call a desktop magnifier, meaning it's just, it could be rechargeable, it could be a plug-in, and this one here has two different types of magnification. It has 2 times, which is the majority of that surface on the lens, and then 5 times, which is a smaller area, to be able to look in a little closer. On the bottom left, you're going to find something called a round magic touch magnifier. These are great magnifiers because they also not only do a dual purpose, meaning you can use a stand and you can run instruments through it. You can also take it off the stand to get a more close-up view. It has different ranges of LED lights, as well as being 3 times the magnification. The picture next to it on the bottom is called the LED magnifier, which is 4 times the magnification. I want you to remember that 4 times magnification because we're going to talk about that a little further on. This is lightweight. It does have different adjustables for the LEDs, just like the round magic touch next to it. And you can also just lift it up, you can go close, or you can run instruments through it. Now for looking at more enhanced inspection magnifiers, the first one would be something called a USB microscope. Now, with the microscopes, they usually have a software that needs to be downloaded, whether it's in a thumb drive or online. This one will start from 10 times to 230 times the magnification. This range is dependent on your PC itself. Now, with these type of microscopes, they can actually come off the stand itself, which isn't typical of all microscopes, so you do need to ask those questions when purchasing them. The far right is what we refer to as a build-a-borescope technology, which we'll talk about in a little bit. This is a borescope. So the borescopes, depending on who you're going with, will have a different range of diameter catheters to look down certain lumens. The other type of feature that you need to be aware of is it a rigid fixed unit, meaning the catheter is connected and it doesn't disconnect, and as well as the lighting. This will also need software to be downloaded, whether it's a USB thumb drive or maybe online, or possibly, if it's an older model, on a disk. To go back to the desktop workstation magnifiers, as we talked about before, they can range between 1.8 to 2 times the magnification. But there are newer ones out in the market where the whole lens is interchangeable. Well, basically it pops out. And you can buy the type of magnification separately to go in it. As you can see, the lowest magnification on here is still the highest than a normal desktop magnifier for your workstations. And then the highest will actually go up to 4.75 times the magnification. I want you to remember the 4 times magnification, which is right next to it, when we go on into IFUs. But this could be an option for your department. Going back and continuing basically with surface inspection, this is a prime example of a USB microscope that can actually come off the stand. Now, when it comes off the stand, you can actually look, for an example, at the distal end of a rigid endoscope. And as you can see here, you can see dents and even scratches and some more damage on the rigid end of that scope, where normally you wouldn't be able to see under normal magnification or with the naked eye. Another surface optical inspection tool is something called a loupe or a loupe set. Now, loupe sets have been around for a long time, where you basically take the loupe, you can put it over your eye, and then you would look at whatever device or instrument you were going to be looking at. In this case, this is a newer technology where the loupe set, actually you can take the loupe piece off, and then you can attach an adapter to the loupe that you then would attach to your cell phone. In these videos, you can see how removing that loupe piece and attaching it to the adapter, and then you put it simply over your camera on your phone. It doesn't matter if it's an Android or even an iPhone, that you could basically have that enhanced magnification at your fingertips. This is great for quality checks. Maybe if you don't have a policy that says you could have cell phones in a department, so maybe this could be something for leadership or even infection prevention. Borescopes typically come together with maybe a handle with the catheter connected where it cannot become detached. In this technology, which is a little bit newer, kind of goes with that Build-A-Bear concept. In this case, it's a Build-A-Borescope. What I mean by this is that the control box would be the bear, meaning you can select what type of control box you need for your department. One would actually take video in picture, and another one would just be visible. So meaning you would be able to just use this type of control box in the decontam, not necessarily taking pictures or video. Now, with this exchange system, the catheters actually are, you can exchange between different sizes. So in this case, it comes with a 1.9 millimeter, which would go down a 2 millimeter or larger diameter, and a 1.06 millimeter catheter that would go down a 1.1 millimeter. Now, what's really nice about this is just like Build-A-Bear. When you buy the bear, you can buy the shoes, the dress, the pants, and such. With this Build-A-Borescope, once you have the control box, when new catheters come out or any type of accessories, let's say you want a mobile cart and decontam to be able to move it around, or maybe your IT doesn't like the software downloaded, so then you would want to buy a preloaded tablet that would be on the stand itself, or even a container to house the catheters. But what's really nice is that when new catheters come out, like in this case, a smaller one came out, which is only 60 centimeters versus the 110 centimeters that are used down flexible GI scopes. This smaller one, which is a 1.9 millimeter, could actually go down shavers or maybe down a laparoscopic suction. So it's less cumbersome to be able to use something that's really long. Now, here's a good example of the use of the borescope and understanding that borescopes are not necessarily always used for GI or bronch flexible endoscopes. They can be used for a variety of lumens. In this case here, you can see on the bottom that I'm going down and I captured a video of going down a suction in a laparoscopic set. You can see going down pretty quickly we run into staining, which more likely is leftover water deposits or the chemicals left over from maybe possibly a chemistry solution, or even bits and fragments of bone. But again, this technology can be used for other types of lumens. Another internal optical inspection tool is something called an endoprocam. In this case, an endoprocam would be able to evaluate the integrity of the optics, meaning all the optics, not just the fiber optics with lighting, but also the glass prisms within a rigid scope, as well as a semi-rigid, or maybe like a semi-rigid ureteroscope, or even flexible endoscopes, meaning without lumens. So we're talking about maybe an intubation scope or a sinuscope that's flexible. In this case, it would be something that would be portable. It has its own light source, all rechargeable batteries, and you would basically have a test card that you would look at to making sure that the numbers and symbols are clear and concise, and then looking for vivid color on the test pattern. The picture on the bottom right, you can see a big blurred area there, and that's just an example of a broken prism inside that rigid scope. If they were broken light fibers, the whole screen would be actually dark, exactly what the OR would see in the room. This is basically a mini tower for SPD to be proactive instead of reactive. Objective 2. We're going to review the ANSI/AAMI standards and recommendations like ST79 and ST91 and various or a few IFUs on the use of enhanced magnification. ANSI/AAMI came out in January of 2021, the 2020 amendments to ST79. There were 4 amendments that came out, but there were 2 specific ones that were pretty lengthy, basically about 6 pages. There was a new section added called 8.2 Inspection of Instruments, and then another section called 8.2.1. Now 8.2 was about just general inspection and the magnification that is out there and the use. But 8.2.1 was about instrumentation that had electrical current going down them, meaning insulated devices, laparoscopic, insulated instrumentation to even bipolar forceps. Under the first section, 8.2, inspection of instruments, it states that each time a medical device is processed, it should be visually inspected for cleanliness and integrity. Under the same section, it even states that enhanced inspection with magnification, borescopes, or other inspection methods to verify the cleanliness and integrity may be used. For an example, this could be the endoprocam or a technology to be able to look at those inner optics. Borescopes or other methods may be used to check the internal channels of instrumentation for cleanliness and integrity unless otherwise recommended in the IFU. In the same section, when recommended in the IFU, enhanced inspection should be used and the enhanced visualization tool, manufacturer's written IFU, should be followed. Under section 8.2.1, for inspection of instruments intended to be used with electrical current, in the very end of that section, there's actually a table or table 1. Now, with table 1, it talks about in each column the instrument or device to be inspected, inspection points, possible damage, and then methods to assist with the inspection and testing. Following the table, there's actually figures 1 through 5 that show the actual inspection points of those possible damage, and these pictures are actually in color, which helps the user identify this type of damage or concern right away. But to know, under methods to assist with inspection/testing, it does list enhanced magnification microscope. Now, in the ANSI AMI ST91 that was released last year for the 2021 revision, under section 7.8.3, borescope inspection, it states the internal channels of a flexible endoscope that are accessible can be inspected by a borescope or other appropriate inspection methods. A borescope can be used periodically to inspect the accessible channels of a flexible endoscope at a frequency determined by the facilities. It goes on to state that tools such as a video borescopes of an appropriate dimension, an example of the length and diameter, can be used to visually inspect the accessible internal channels and document their condition. These pictures here are prime examples of why you should be using a borescope and other enhanced inspection methods out there. This was a facility where you can see on the top left that the seals were bad and actually had residue in the control knob. The distal end on the top right, you can see that the outer edge is coming off and it actually is flaking. The distal end on the bottom picture there has something that looks like either a debris or maybe it's epoxy glue coming off from the lens. But again, these are prime example of why magnification or enhanced inspection is so important. This scope, these pictures are actually of one scope that was a patient-ready scope at an endoscopy center. IFU's instructions for use. So in this IFU, happens to be from Da Vinci, it states under the decontaminant, even on the clean side, the supplies needed, a magnifying glass 4 times preferred, which would be the minimum at least. And this is an example of a picture of one that would be a 4 times. That means you can't use anything lower than that. So for your desktop workstation magnifiers, they're only ranging between 1.8 to 2. So in this case, for this type of complex instrument, you wouldn't be able to use that. You would have to use something more enhanced, like maybe a USB microscope, or this LED 4 times the magnifier, or the desktop magnifier that has interchangeable lenses that does have a 4 and a 4.75. The IFU for Stryker for the arthroscopic shavers states that visually inspect the handpiece including all internal surfaces for remaining soil. Use an endoscopic camera and endoscope if necessary to see the inner surface of the lumen. Translation, borescope. Arthrex as well for their arthroscopic shavers. It's recommended that the cannulation be inspected with the illuminated magnifying scope to ensure that all debris is removed. Again, translation, this would be a borescope. Objective 3. Review key areas of concern for various complex instrumentation. So in regards to robotics, you can see pretty quickly here why the IFU states the minimum at 4 times the magnification. This is actually the USB microscope that you saw pictures of earlier. Now, these were actually robotic arms that were ready to be used and sterilized. This is at the distal working end, and you can see the picture on the left has damage to the linkage. The picture on the right has all kinds of lint and debris inside that linkage area. So prime example of using a 4 times preferred or minimum or higher. In this case, these are different robotic arms from a different facility. This was sterile, ready to go, patient ready in a peel pouch, and you can see debris or tissue in the linkage area. And then on the left-hand side, and in the picture on the right, you can see more tissue in a different area of that distal end. Again, prime example of areas of concern, always looking at that distal end and focusing on the working mechanisms throughout that grasper or scissors or whatever it may be. So in regards to insulated items, for an example, let's look at these pictures for laparoscopic. The picture in the middle is actually a handle of a laparoscopic instrument where you can see areas are missing the insulation, which is a source of concern because this can actually burn through the surgeon's glove, or if it's laid down on a patient drape, can actually cause a fire. The picture on the right is at the distal end of an L hook, and this here is missing pieces. Now with standard magnification, let's say like a desktop, you may not be able to see this very clearly, and from that view or that type of magnification, it may look fine, and actually it's not. So some more laparoscopic instrumentation. The shaft is also a concern, but really the two main areas of concern are the proximal and distal end, meaning the handle where it connects with the handle, or the distal end like you see in these pictures here, where there's frays of insulation coming off, which can be definitely another source of a concern because that can fall into a patient. Also, you can have stray arcing in these areas where it would actually burn an organ. The last picture on the far right is towards the distal end, but not necessarily the distal end, where the shaft is split on the bottom. This can be easily overlooked with the naked eye, or even not even the right type of magnification, but with the use of a USB microscope, you can see very clearly it's split and there's actually a bioburden inside. Key areas of concern or inspection in regards to insulated bipolar instrumentation are the base and the distal end. Obviously, the shaft on the top right is a source of concern and it must be inspected, but the distal end and the proximal end are the least that get checked by technicians. Now, because they have an insulation tester, they're checking the shaft of the bipolar forceps, but not necessarily the base. On the top left, you'll see it's cracked and it's lifted up. The bottom left, you can see the base has an excessive amount of epoxy glue and it's actually splitting and lifting up. What this can do is this can actually burn through the surgeon's glove or cause an OR fire with the drape. The bottom pictures on the bottom right are the very distal end of the forceps, which get overlooked. So just because it passes an insulation tester doesn't mean that the top distal end is not scratched excessively or it has big gouges and burned areas where it can actually retain debris. So just understand that when you're inspecting inside a bipolar forceps, that you're focusing not just on the shaft, that you're looking at the base proximal and the working mechanism at the distal end. Now, if we look at the basic points in inspection for power equipment, which a lot of technicians overlook using the right inspection for power equipment because they may not think that there is a lumen. In all reality, there's a lot of lumens with power equipment and this attachment. They just may not be as obvious. So for an example, a drill would have a lumen that would go all the way through. And the picture on the bottom left, far left, you can see a biofilm, almost like a scab, that did not come off with multiple cleaning. The picture in the middle left, you can see a little bit of bone possibly and lint actually adhered to the side of the wall. This is a big concern because this can be transmitted right into the patient. The pictures on the right are both pictures of a sag saw where it actually has the rectangle lumen that the blade attaches to. This is a big area of concerns, and I think all technicians know it's the hard area to clean. But technicians may fail to inspect them after they come back from decontam. In this case here, you can see pieces of lint, pieces of bone, and actually greasy fat layer or biofilm within that lumen. Examples of damage found in flexible GI endoscopes, you can find shaved plastic or Teflon plastic like you see in the picture on the left, where basically it could be a bad brush, it could be a bad instrument being used where it scrapes the Teflon plastic and it causes a little groove and they'll hang almost like lint, like you can see in the video on the right, where they're just kind of hanging in the wind. That can retain bioburden and collect a biofilm just like the channel. Another thing that inspection with a borescope can do is actually look at water or droplets. The picture, the video on the right had been in the cabinet, patient ready, for 3 days. But as you can see, it was still wet and had the string of pearls is what we call it. This is a prime example in being able to go back and looking at your drawing process and maybe revamping that and periodically taking a borescope and looking at your patient ready scopes and then of course reprocess them after the inspection. In conclusion, you need to know how to select for purchase the various enhanced inspection tools out there in the market. You also need to know their use and what they come with and how that is used. And of course, your need in the department, meaning depending on the instrumentation that you have, will depend on what magnification that you're going to need. You also want to know your ANSI/AAMI standards and recommendations and making sure you have the most current standard recommendations in your department. And remember, ST79 and ST91 both have those statements in there. Also looking at your inventory's IFU for instrumentation, because as you can see, we only went over just a few of IFUs that call out specific enhanced magnification being used, like a borescope, or a specific number or level of magnification, like Da Vinci with 4 times being that minimum. You also want to know key areas of concern for various complex instrumentations from your department, just like the pictures that were shown. But understand this wasn't every complex instrument that was in your department, and you need to go back and look to make sure that there's not anything specifically in the IFU that calls out those key areas for either cleaning and inspection, or reach out to the vendor themselves. You also need to understand that enhanced inspection may need to be per workstation instead of a single area for inspection if compliance is not present. These are my references for this presentation. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Marianne Drosnock, Director of Clinical Affairs here at Healthmark Industries. I'd like to thank you for watching today's CE program. If you got something out of today's video, please hit the like button and then be sure to subscribe to the Healthmark Education channel so you can know as soon as we post more educational content. By liking and sharing our videos and by subscribing to our channel, you are helping us grow. That way we can share the message of patient safety to more sterile processing and endoscopy processing communities, as well as our OR and IP partners. To get your 1CE certificate for viewing today's video, there is a link in the video description that will take you to the quiz. Just complete the quiz with a 70% or better, enter your name and email, and you will be issued a 1CE certificate immediately. You can download that certificate right to your device, or it will be emailed to the address that you provided. Thank you again for watching, and we hope you had a great CS Week 2023. Bye.